Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Presenting myself, I'm Joelle Gantt. I'm the Territory Sales Manager for Eastern Canada, and I have with me a couple of people who are going to help do this call or host this call with me today. Steve Fick, that I will introduce in just a bit, and Michel Cloutier, whom, if you've been on these calls before, you may have heard before, as he's the Territory Technical Manager for Eastern Canada. And either you've seen us in webinars, events, or live in person at your company. One way or another, we love to hear your stories and see what you're doing. And over the years, as as Solidworks and the team has gone through companies and spoken to customers, we've come to realize that a huge piece of the puzzle to becoming efficient, productive, and having a workflow that works well within first the engineering department, but then after being connected to the rest of the company, includes data management. It is a huge piece of the puzzle, and PDM, so Product Design Management, has been part of our portfolio for quite some time, and people have been using it quite effectively and making a big difference in how they work on a day-to-day basis. But you're connected to more than just that. The engineering team is connected to other divisions, and this helps you be connected and getting information to the right people. We're going to explore this in a little bit of a bigger fashion, which is why today's topic is data domino. So how not doing it properly could have a domino effect in your enterprise, and create other issues. And to help us do that today, we have a special guest that I'll introduce in just a minute. Before we get there, I want to get to just some little details. We've got some handouts that are in your GoToMeeting window on the right-hand side. If you want, you can click on them and download them for yourself. There's also below that a chat area where it says type message here. So if you have questions during this presentation, please don't hesitate. You can write these in French or English. Another reason why Michelle is on the line is to be able to monitor those and translate if needed. So please don't hesitate. Ask your questions as you go. And please keep in mind, this is an overview. This is to get you thinking. This is to get you wondering if there's possibly a different way of doing things within your company. And maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe for the future, but get you thinking of where you're going and how you're going to get there. So our special guest today is Steve Fick. We have had him on calls for Eastern Canada before, so you may have met him either live or on these webinars. But Steve started his career as a design engineer and quickly jumped into the reseller world of SolidWorks. So Steve worked for Fisher Unitech in the US, which is a large reseller for us. And this gave him a chance to see a multitude of companies, applications, initiatives, whatever it may be. And this is the best way for us to gain experience, is to see as many of your ideas and how you work, so that we can find better ways maybe of doing it and proposing them to you. For the last just about 4 years, Steve has been with SolidWorks. He's a senior technical manager for us, and one of his specialties is data management, which is why we've invited him here today to speak with you. So without further ado, Steve, I'm going to hand this off to you, and I will be back at the end to close.
All right, great. Thanks, Joelle. Let me go ahead and we'll get my, share my monitor. All right, so let's dive into this. You know, when back in December 11th, 1998, you know, the NASA launched this satellite. It was the Mars Climate Orbiter. And it was interesting because this was the first interplanetary weather satellite designed to gather data on the climate of Mars, but as well as serve as a future relay station for the Mars Polar Lander, which was going to launch a few weeks later. Now, many of you may have heard this story, but a decision or maybe an assumption was made about this, that the software on the spacecraft that used to measure the changes in velocity was going to be done in metric, measured in Newton per second, while the software on the ground used the imperial system, pounds per second. This was something that NASA was still very much ingrained in doing. But it meant that every adjustment to the satellite's trajectory was off by a factor of 4.45. Now, during the 9-month cruise to Mars, 7 adjustment hairs were introduced to the trajectory of this satellite, meaning that when it arrived, it was 105 miles off course, and it crashed, never to be heard or seen from again. This is an example of the domino effect, right? A cumulative, Webster defines it as a cumulative effect produced when one event initiates a succession of similar events. And it can have grave implications. Now, hopefully the implications that we're going to talk through today as we go through the data domino effect are not quite as tragic or as grave, but I think you will find that you probably may see some part of your company in each of these as we go through them. So we're going to look at 3 different scenarios over the next, let's say 30 to 40 minutes. We're going to look at how data domino effects can have impact in engineering change. We're going to look at how these impacts can produce themselves in product development. And we're going to look at a scenario where it can produce itself in design procurement. Right. So these are the 3 scenarios that we'll look at today that will play out. And let's start with engineering change. Right. This is pretty common in any organization, and the way that oftentimes the data domino effect plays out in engineering change is it starts with this fundamental decision to store our data on network folders. Right? This is pretty common. It served engineering fairly well, actually, for a long time until we started getting to more complex tools like Solidworks. Allowed us to gain a lot of efficiencies, but there was a lot of data that started to be produced. And we tried to continue to use old methodologies for new tools. I'll give you, for example, what often happens in network folders is companies have the engineering folder drive and they have the release drive. And they tend to play what I affectionately call the engineering shell game, right? Where you've got designs that need to be changed. And so they get moved from the manufacturing drive to the engineering drive, and we make those changes. And then we do our best to make sure that they're correctly captured and then moved back to the manufacturing drive, and this process continues. But it has this domino effect. These design changes, they get introduced into the process, and once those design changes are introduced, oftentimes there's not a lot of notification that occurs, and there's this moving of files in this process. And it has this knock-on effect where there's oftentimes no notification that this has been done or it's been completed. And because there's no notification, and because we potentially missed moving some files around, now manufacturing is basically making the wrong part, making the wrong revision of the part. And it has this continued knock-on effect to where now we're looking at scrap and rework. So it's this, it's these simple things. A lot of organizations have really great people that just make this happen really well. But the reality is that more often than people want to admit, there's this continual effect that occurs and implication. All right, so how do we address this effect that occurs? Well, with PDM tools like SolidWorks PDM Professional, gives us a secure environment where we can log in, make sure that the right people have the right content at the right time. It manages revisions for us. So not only do we capture the revisions, but part of that secure login is ensuring that users are seeing what they should see. It has powerful workflow capability, so I'm notifying people when those changes are occurring, and that, like I said, that happens in an automated fashion. So with that, let's take a few minutes and kind of look at how this how we can solve this with just really simple and powerful tools like PDM Professional. So here I'm securely logging into my vault. You're going to notice it's a really comfortable environment. It still looks and feels like Windows Explorer. The benefit though here is as I kind of zoom in here, you're going to see that I've got visibility to exactly the state that each of my files are in. So some of my files are pending approval and some of them are a work in process. The added benefit here is that I have eDrawings Professional built in, so I can snap measurements. So if I want to look at this design to make sure that it's what needs to be approved, I can do that. I also have full traceability to all the versions and revisions. So I'm not having to move files around. I'm not having to append their file name with Rev B or Rev C. I can just simply select the file and pick the revision that I want to look at. We can look at the design as a whole. So that's the last approved. I can pull up maybe the incremental versions. This is a really important aspect of PDM, is that I'm capturing the incremental versions that are occurring on my way to the release. So here you can see we had some initial design with some pockets. The final design that's being submitted for approval has those pockets being pushed all the way through. Now at this point, I can decide to go ahead and approve it, but maybe I want to see what the workflow state is, right? So right now it's in a pending approval. I get some great visibility to, all right, what's the next stage in the workflow? And so here I'm going to decide I like the design. I'm going to go ahead and issue my my approval, and so we can right click and just simply go ahead and change the state to approved. Now here I'm doing a parallel approval. So I'm not only able to capture workflow, I can do fairly complex workflows. You can see that Mark's already provided his comments, his feedback. He likes it. I'm going to approve it as well, and it's going to double challenge me for my password. So if you're in regulatory environments where digital sign-offs require you to add your password a second time, we can do that. And now my design is in a state of released at revision B. Now, this is great from an engineering or management standpoint. I haven't had to move files around and track all that craziness. It's just very focused and very cleanly done. Before I move on to the next stage, though, I do want to draw your attention to something. Notice that in this folder, I have a total of 5 files. I've got 2 of which are released, the ones that we just approved. But you'll also notice in this folder, I've got 3 files that are still at a work in process. So engineering is still kind of hashing out the design on those. That'll be important here in just a moment. So let's put on a different hat, and let's say I'm going to log in as Dave, my manufacturing person, and he has a different view of the vault based on his permissions. He gets notified. So part of our transition notified Dave that, hey, that design is now released. So that's really helpful. At least I've been kind of clued in on that. And you'll notice that as Dave transitions through the vault, when he gets to that design folder, he only sees the 2 files that are currently in a released state. So he doesn't have visibility to the work in process. Now, this is something that you can set per the user permissions. But more than that, he also only has visibility to the approved revisions. He doesn't have visibility to all the incremental versions that are happening or did happen with engineering. So this is, again, really powerful in the sense that now Dave, as a manufacturing person, we're lessening the risk of him accidentally grabbing a design that shouldn't be manufactured and potentially creating, lots of scrap or rework. Okay. So when we look at this, it's extremely powerful in its ability to kind of put an end to this idea of the data domino effect when it comes to engineering change. So much so, when we look at companies like Apco, Apco Automation is a great company that does design automation equipment here in the States. By implementing PDM, they were able to reduce their scrap by 50%. They said, since implementing PDM, we have the foundation in place that we need to automate our processes, eliminate waste, and remove unnecessary costs. Solidworks PDM has allowed us to really ramp up. So it's just a great testimony to this idea of tools like this can really affect the ability to stop the data domino effect in engineering change. And when we stop it, we can reduce scrap, right? When we put an end to it. All right, so that's scenario one. Oftentimes we see play out in organizations, big and small. It doesn't matter. So let's look at scenario two. How does this cascading effect often manifest itself in product development? Well, more often than not, product development, a lot of it happens in rooms just like this, and it's not always out of by design. It's not the ideal place. It happens more because of scenarios like this. And I've talked to a lot of customers that say, you know what, when we go to do product development, we use disconnected tools. We capture requirements in Office documents like Word and Excel. We manage the tasks associated with the product development. In worst case scenarios, I've seen it managed through Post-it notes on a whiteboard. In better case scenarios, we manage it through Outlook or through Smart Team or a Smart Sheet. And then we manage the project itself. The project manager has Microsoft Project, but nobody has visibility to that. And worse yet, none of those tools are actually connected to the engineering documentation that we're generating, right? And so what happens is because of this, there's some collaboration, but it's painful, and it doesn't happen very cleanly or very freely. The other thing that happens is there's this knock-on effect where, because these things aren't connected, there's limited status visibility. It's hard to get a sense of where the project actually is, where our development is in this process, because engineering timesheets are connected to the project. There's just this whole host of things that happen. So what happens? Well, we have weekly team meetings, or we have project managers that chase people around cubicles and ask for updates and where are we on tasks and where are we in different aspects of it. And ultimately it leads to just this set of wasted time and money in a lot of ways. All right. So just to emphasize this a little bit more, the Project Management Institute recently identified, back in 2016, a whole list of reasons why projects fail, but three of them that I think were pretty interesting is that 30% fail because of poor communication. Right, that's not a surprise if things aren't connected or connected well. 28% of them fail because of inaccurate task time estimates. So initial estimates on the tasks, maybe it's because not enough input was gained from enough people, but maybe also because of just making sure that they're getting updated and that feedback's being given. And 29% of them fail because of poor change management, right? So maybe not good processes, good ways of capturing issues that come up. These are some of the reasons why that it's no surprise that this kind of data domino effect occurs. So we can solve this. There's good news. SolidWorks Manage, this is a new product. It's an advanced data management product that extends the capabilities of PDM Professional. So that's great news from the standpoint of initially it's connected to the content, the deliverables that engineering is creating. It provides dashboarding, project management capabilities, process management, and advanced bill of material and record management. So I'm gonna give you a real kind of a high-level introduction to what Manage can do in this area of kind of managing projects and helping to curb this domino effect. So we'll start by looking at the fact that we have dashboarding capabilities, and dashboarding can. What's nice about this is that this can be per the user that has a specific view into what they need to see for that given day, where the project is, where the tasks might be, so status updates. The fact that this is all tied to a single point of data means that we don't have these silos of information. The single project management Microsoft project file that one person has access to or whatnot. So this gives us great visibility into this. When we dig a little deeper and we start to look at the projects, we can actually dig in and view each project as a record and view its Gantt chart. So I can get an understanding of where each of the stages of the project are, and it's easy to drag and drop if I need to move a stage out. I can assign resources to each of these stages, and I can have tasks associated with each of them as well. Tasks are great because they drive the stages and people can provide input to each of these tasks. Now, the other nice thing is we can create tasks on the fly. So maybe I decide, well, we're having some failures on this design. We need to do some additional simulation at this stage in the project. So I can initiate that task. I can maybe get some feedback from users on how much time they think it's going to need. Initially, I'm going to do 16 hours. And this becomes really powerful because Manage is connected to PDM. So I'm able to browse right into the vault, search for the part or the assembly that I want to run the analysis on, and attach it directly to the task. I can then assign it to the user that I want to run the simulation. And now at this point, I've captured this as as part of the stage of this project. This task now will show up on Ian's home screen when he logs in to Manage, and all the things that he needs to do are captured and put together in a nice clean location, so he immediately can start doing his work. What's also nice with this is that we can come in and we can actually have bills of materials captured as part of a project. So, for many of you, if you're doing large projects where, maybe you're doing a large plant or process design, and it's not just one assembly that you're shipping to the customer, you're shipping multiple assemblies that all make up the bill of material. And sometimes it makes sense for that bill of material to be captured as part of the project itself. And this becomes a really powerful way that Manage can capture, again, because it's integrated with PDM, we can grab each of the assemblies that make up this project, and we can pull them together into effectively a project BOM where we're defining quantities and whatnot. What's also nice about this is that you can add non-modeled items to the bill of material as well. So things like packaging or shipping labels or whatnot. All right, so the other thing I want to highlight for you here is that we can do timesheets as well. So if you have to capture time for an engineer to and add it to a task, we can do that. We can also capture time in a timesheet and be able to report on that time. So if you need to give a breakdown of how time is being spent against billable projects, Manage provides a great way to be able to do that. We can also capture special items, things like project issues or maybe risk management type items. I'm going to highlight the project issue one in particular is, when you think about oftentimes projects are going to have challenges. They're going to have issues that come up, and being able to create a punch list, if you will, of those items that are stored with the project and that people have visibility to and where their status is, et cetera, that becomes really powerful. I met with a customer not too long ago that said, yeah, we have weekly meetings and we all come into this room and we have Post-it notes on a whiteboard, and each week we update and we move the Post-it notes around and we get an update on where the issues are, the status. And it worked, but I'm kind of scratching my head thinking, wow, there's got to be a better way. All right. So when we look at this product development process, how do we go about curbing the domino effect that we looked at? Well, through tools like SolidWorks Manage, they help us gain efficiency. They help us gain that some of that time back and that wasted effort and trying to chase people around to get updates and whatnot. All right, let's look at a third and final scenario, and that's in the area of what I'll call design procurement. And when we talk about this, I'm going to illustrate this through a couple different slides. But we'll start with a little bit of a story. We had a customer that came to us and basically said, he got a call from one of his suppliers, and he said, I love doing business with you, but do you realize that your company is requesting pricing for the same electric motor repeatedly? And he said, and my supplier said, and in turn, we're supplying you the same motor under different part numbers. And we also understand that you have requirements to keep spares in stock for each of the systems sent. So, we're sending you spares for each of those unique part numbers. And we kind of, a colleague of mine dug into this a little bit, and he said, why is this happening? Like, why are you ending up with the same electric motor ordered multiple times under different part numbers and whatnot? And it boiled down to the fact that in their company, engineering project managers had the authority to source components if they couldn't find them in their system. And this is a really common situation where we run into the reality of having multiple business systems in an organization. You probably have an ERP or an MRP system. You may have, hopefully you have PDM Professional where you're storing documents. And oftentimes they serve different purposes and they capture different information. But it's valuable information. And as an engineer, you're oftentimes left to decide, okay, I need to find a part that I need to use. Is that information, am I going to find it by searching the ERP system, or am I going to find it searching my PDM system? And the challenge often becomes is that especially with ERP systems, they can be very, very specific in how you have to search. And so what happens? Well, these multiple business systems, I'm left with not great design discovery tools. Right? Maybe if I know the metadata that I'm after, I can find what I'm looking for, but it's not necessarily going to give me any insight into whether or not that's a good design to use, or are there other designs that maybe make more sense to utilize. And if I can't find it or I can't find a good alternative, what am I left to do? Well, I end up remodeling it. So I go to the extra effort of just modeling a part that may already exist from scratch. Well, that creates part duplication. This is kind of one of those these quiet issues that just happens, and a lot of times companies don't even realize it, that they're duplicating parts, and they may not be exact duplicates, but they're going through a lot of effort to design a part that maybe they already have that would work just fine for the application. So what happens here? Well, increased cost, right? It's expensive to introduce a new part number. And just to give you some context to what happens in this domino effect, Aberdeen recently did a study that 45% of engineering time is spent searching and recreating designs if they can't find it. And some context, the annual cost to introduce a new part number, and this is in US dollars, is anywhere from $4,500 to $23,000. There's a wide spectrum there. In some industries where maybe it's machine design and not highly regulated, the cost of introducing a new part number is lower. But you get into highly regulated industries like aerospace or other, the cost to introduce a new part number is extremely high because of all the validation, all the tooling, all the subsequent things that go along with introducing that part number. So how do we go about curbing this? Well, let's take a minute just to do a quick whiteboard. We talked about this idea that a lot of companies have multiple business, systems, whether they're PDM, network folders, ERP system, homegrown databases, etc. So there's all these different locations where the data exists. The way that we can go about curbing this is by looking at a tool called Xlead OnePart. And what Xlead OnePart does is it sits on the top of these systems and it indexes them. And it gives a user a single point to look and search across all these systems and correlate data. So let me give you some visuals to help describe this a little better. So when we look at a design like this, you may have one of these in your company. This is a monitor mount for a TV. We've got to design a bracket for the end of it. OnePart allows me to log in, look at all of my data, across multiple sources, and I can start to do a search. Now, what's nice is as I search, I get search ahead suggestions about what I'm looking for, and I'm actually going to spell this wrong. This name bracket wrong, and actually it still finds results for it. Use the analytics over on the left-hand side of the screen to say, okay, I'm indexing a couple different sources. I'm indexing a PDM environment, I'm indexing a network drive, and I'm indexing maybe a drive that we acquired through acquisition. This is a fairly common situation. You get a bunch of data and from a company that you've acquired, and you don't even know what you've got. I can use the analytics then to further drill down. I'm going to use material to find filter what I'm looking for. So it's very visual. I can graphically select exactly what I'm after. And then I can use almost like a shopping approach. I'm going to select 3 brackets that I find interesting, and I'm going to put them into swim lanes, and I can now compare their data. So I can start to make some interesting decisions about, weight is an issue. So having them side by side sure makes it nice. I can see this one's awfully heavy. So I'm going to take it out of the running, and I'm just going to focus on these 2. Right? So at this point, I can select on the design and start to look at its details a little closer. Right? So all its metadata is presented to me. I can see similar parts. So this is great. If I would have found this part, it would have given me a similar design, but it's also correlated supporting information. So this already has a flat pattern DWG that's been created. It has a PDF for purchasing. The Solidworks drawing is done, and it shows that it's being used in an assembly. So I already have tooling that's been done for this part. So this is really powerful information when I have to decide, okay, well, first, do I have a design I can use? But 2, which is the better one to leverage, right? So all of my configuration data is extracted out of PDM Pro and presented to me. But likewise, I can select on maybe the other part that I'm considering. And when I look at this part, I've got a drawing, but I don't have any of the tooling that's been created. None of the manufacturing DWGs are done. So there's going to be some additional work that I have to finish if I'm going to use this part. Nevertheless, it's a good part, and it needs to be brought into our PDM system. And so I can actually utilize OnePart to tag components. So this is pretty neat. I can tag them with information, and I can use that later in my searching. What's nice about this is the part I want to use. So all I have to do is hit open and source. Immediately it takes me to my PDM environment, and I can just simply drag and drop this part from PDM directly into my SolidWorks design. Simple. Let's look at another scenario that can oftentimes play out for the same design. Maybe I'm looking for a purchased part. Now, this information may be more suited to live in the ERP system. And so what's nice is that I can overlay ERP information like manufacturer, and in this case, I also maybe am capturing spring size as well. So I'm going to use that to help filter. When I put my designs next to each other, right? So when I grab the same concept, I'm going to put these into swim lanes so that I can compare them. Again, now I'm overlaying price data that exists in the ERP system onto my designs. I'm also overlaying information like whether or not we stock these parts or not. So, it might make sense to utilize a spring that both we stock and is, meets my requirements. So again, I can use open and source and just simply drag and drop it directly into my design. So it becomes extremely powerful to uncover and discover data that you may have in your organization by utilizing one part. This is a great Dassault customer, Brew Technologies. They make many of the RF signal devices, and for them, when they implemented one part, it was a 75% reduction in their duplicates going forward. And this quote kind of sums up why. It says, with XLead one part, information search has been reduced from an average of 4 minutes per search to just a few seconds. And that speaks to the adoption too. If I can find things faster and I'm finding value in the results, I'll use it more, and I'm more willing to find designs that I want to use or that might exist in our company. All right, so we've looked at how we can stop the data domino effect inside of engineering change. PDM Pro helps us to reduce scrap. We've looked at product development, how we can curb that with SolidWorks Manage and gain efficiency. And in design procurement, we can leverage one part to help us reduce cost. And you've probably inferred this through much of the presentation, but there really is, there's no doubt that there is cost associated with domino effects like this. We started by talking about the satellite that was on its way to Mars and unfortunately met a very unfortunate timely death. It was at a cost of $125 million, right? So one decision and 7 cascading course corrections ended up 105 miles off course and a cost of $125 million US. So keep that in mind as you start to think through your own organization. Where are some of those domino effects that are occurring that with simple tools? The good news is much of it can be addressed, can be corrected. And so as you think about that, visit the launch site, the launch.solidworks.com, and visit the distributed data management portion of the site. You can get a deeper insight into many of the new capabilities that are part of PDM Professional, SolidWorks Manage, and one part. And thanks for your time. Michelle, any questions that we want to touch on?
Yeah, maybe one question that came up about the version available. Early on you talked about with PDM, and the question came up: could we limit visibility to only the last revision of any files for manufacturing?
So the inbound or the out of the box tool allows you to just limit to the primary revisions, but there are ways through the workflow that we could potentially look at just only giving visibility to the latest, and that may mean creating maybe it's a deliverable that's automated that they just have visibility to. Okay. But out of the box with what I showed you, you give the user the visibility to just the released revisions, and they do have visibility to those.
Gotcha. No other questions. So thank you for that, Steve. And I think I'll let Joelle do the wrap up.
Okay, great.
All right. Thanks, guys. Great information, Steve. Appreciate it. And I hope that none of you in your enterprises are feeling the crash of the satellite. I hope it's not gone to that extreme. And the idea of presenting this information to you is to help alleviate as much of that as your company grows. Because as your company grows or as time goes on, data increases, and there's nothing we can do about that. It just happens. And we want to give you solutions to be able to manage that effectively and to improve and maybe meet some of your initiatives in terms of workflows or time savings, whatever it may be. And interestingly enough, we met a customer just this week whose reduction in time opening for files reduced drastically from one version of a tool to another of our PDM, and it was incredible how much time they had calculated that their engineers spend maybe waiting for something to open, and how some of these issues can be addressed as well with data management. So a lot of things to think about. This is a recording of this webinar. Of course, you can take a snapshot of the tile that's there. You can also reuse the link that you used to come into this webinar. It will get you there again. We have a page where we keep a hosting of all of our webinars that we've hosted for Eastern Canada, or most of them, so you can find things there, either to see again yourself or to share with somebody else within your company that you think would take value in seeing this information. As well, you can contact us if you want more information on any of these topics. Other than the websites, there's any of us as a resource, and of course your resellers, right? They're there to help guide you, and hopefully they know your business already better than we do, and can dive in with or without us into what you do today, how you do it, and if there's any other way that we could help improve that. So please don't hesitate in any of these resources to get some more details, some more information. Thank you for being on the call, and if there's no other questions that have come up, we'll wrap it up, and we'll wish you all a wonderful weekend. Thanks, guys, for hosting. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Steve.
All right. Take care.